So welcome everybody to an hour and a half of David Bouchard playing flute.
There, everybody just checked off.
Yeah, we just went from 100 participants to 4, and 2 of them are our wives. So welcome everybody. We're just this is all new stuff to us, so bear with us as we try and explore and make this all happen. I'm just watching the number of registrations coming in, and I'm trying to get as many people in as we expect before we start, so that people don't miss things. But there are 177 or 180 people expected to join us, but I know we won't get everybody. We're getting up there now. So I will start. What I want to do before anything else is just welcome you and thank you all. You are a very eclectic group, I have to tell you. We did one of these presentations 2 days ago, and all of the people that participated had booked David at some point and had him come to the school, so they knew him very well and knew his presentation. This is a different group. This group, we have referrals from Tuesday's presentation. We have people from David's Instagram account. We have people from Vicky Bouchard's Instagram account. And we have the majority of our people here today are people that have purchased books from us at some point or the other. So it's going to be interesting. So what I would like to do is I just want to see if we can get people to test in the button, because every so often I might ask you something. On the bottom of your screen, there's a little thing that says raise your hand. So could I get people to raise their hands to see if it works? There's hands going up in throngs. That's good. That's what I wanted to see. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lower all those hands, because I'm going to ask you guys a question shortly and try and get our hands raised on that. So there, I've just lowered your hands. So I'll do that again in just a second. I want to first introduce myself. My name is Chris Patrick, and David and I have worked together for 20 years. As David has toured North America, particularly Canada, from coast to coast to coast. We've worked together, and I've arranged all of his plans and making it happen and dealing with all the schools. And he has, of course, gone out and done all the speaking. We also publish as well. We have published about 6 books together under the banner of More Than Words Publishers. Now, David, you don't all know David, actually. You can't all know him because you may have just bought his books. To say that he's accomplished would be an understatement. He is a member of the Order of Canada. There is a school in Oshawa, Ontario called the David Bouchard School, and not that long ago he was granted a doctorate, an honorary doctorate at Kingston University. With the school, we kind of laugh because when that first happened, I have to admit, David, I'm sure you would agree with you, we were both a little bit shocked, and we laughed and said 100 years from now, what are people going to say? They're going to say, who's the school named after? And it's just some old dead guy. We don't know who it is. So
they're saying that now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So done those intros. At the end of, so our presentation today, David is going to read from his latest book, We Learn from the Sun. We're going to have a presentation of that. After that, he is going to talk to you about learning in a pandemic area, what we can do and how we can change how we do our presentations, et cetera, to fit this new world. There will be a time for questions and answers. You can see at the bottom there's a Q&A thing. I've you got one question already. I'll look at that in a second, but I'd rather wait until everything is done, and we will take as long as is necessary to answer all of your questions. Before we begin, I would like to start by and acknowledge and thank the Coast Salish people upon whose traditional territory North Vancouver resides. I express our gratitude to the Squamish Nation and the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, and we value the opportunity to learn, live, and share educational experiences on this traditional territory. I'm talking about that because I'm in Vancouver, and that's the group of people to whom I give thanks. What I'm going to do right now, before I pass it over to David, is just quickly, I want to see how many hands go up. How many of you out there are involved in the education field in one way or another? Administrator, teacher, not parent, because that doesn't count, but somehow a lot of hands just went up. So let me just have a look, see. I don't know if I can tell how many hands are actually going up here, David. A lot of hands. We have a lot of people in the education business here. So without no further ado, I'm going to pass it over to David to get started on things for us.
Well, let me start by thanking Chris and welcoming all of you. Thank you for being here. Honestly, I'm humbled and I'm honored to see you here, to have you spend some time with us. And I'll try not to bore you, and I'll try not to keep you longer than I have to. Can I start by acknowledging the land that we're on here in Victoria? We're on Songhees land, although there's an overlap between the Coast Salish and the Kwakwaka'wakw peoples. Predominantly where my home is here, it's on Songhees territories. We respect the people, the land, and wish that we would have gotten on board in this movement so much longer. We have a lot to make up for. As a country, individually, we have a lot to make up for. And then let me welcome you to my shack. You know, when we look at some of the changes in CNN and some of the major broadcasting, and we see that things had to take place in their homes, it gives us a chance to look around and say, oh, this is Chris Como's basement, or this is whomever's place, and all of a sudden you see where and how they live, and this is an honest reflection of my world. This is my shack. It's a little house out behind our main house. And as you can see, there's flutes, and normally there's pelts here, but I had to move them because Vicky and Josie both thought that dead animals were not an attraction to anyone but me. And there's shelves, there's books, flutes, and it's just warm and cozy. And I spend most of my days out here. I call it a shack because I'm from Saskatchewan. If I were younger, somebody might say, oh, it's your man cave. It's a shack, and we call it a shack or a shed, and this is the shack. So I started by thanking the Songhees people and Chris for the big effort that he's made in doing this, for all of you for spending some time with us, and I promise you I'm not going to drag this on longer than I have to. Chris said I was going to read to you from my new book. Well, I'm not going to read to you from my new book. I'm going to read my new book. The book is that short. It's a primary take on one of my best-selling books called The Seven Sacred Teachings. It's the way that I think we as parents, as teachers, as educators should be addressing the world for so many students. It has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with a real natural way of looking at the world. And I promise you, if you subscribe to this, you're gonna find all kinds of successes in your world. Let's do this. We learn from the sun, nothing more. Dedicated to David James Manson. We're taught how to live, when to take, when to give. From our elders, we learn how the earth and sun turn. All their teachings are clear. All their lessons are dear. They're simple and fun. We just learn from the sun. First, we sit in a round, our legs crossed on the ground, and we place our hands flat on our Mother Earth's back. With closed eyes side by side and our hearts opened wide, we're many yet one, waiting there for the sun. We're small and we're weak like the wolf, yet unique. We're humble. It's fun when we learn from the sun. The sun rises each day in the east as we pray. It's huge, it is strong. We're not big. That's wrong. That was humility. This is honesty. When the sun's south we see, we have gifts, you and me. We're unique, everyone. We learned that from the sun. And children should be taught to be honest with themselves. When we look to the west, where the sun goes to rest, we are taught to respect from the old to the nest. On the medicine wheel, we look to the west and we see black. And then when we look to the north, then we turn to the north and our courage comes forth. Barren landscape or white, we find strength to do right. Next, we turn our heads high to our Father, the sky, and hear Beaver advise that we need to be wise. My favorite page, we're told to look down. Mother Earth is the ground. She's the tree. She's snow. Where we're from, where we'll go. When we look deep inside, in our hearts, eagle flies. She's up there above, teaching us how to love. You can learn how to live, when to take, when to give. You'll find that it's fun when you learn from the sun. The book is illustrated by Christy Cameron, with whom I've done 2 other books, The 7 Sacred Teachings and Dreamcatcher. And it's published by Medicine Wheel here in Victoria. And when Chris sends you an email, there'll be a link if you wanted to purchase one from them. So that's it. And I can't tell you how thrilled I am. I think it's going to be one of my best-selling books forever. It just kind of wraps it all up, and it touches young people at the age that you can and should be touched. So let me start with that, and then let me get on with what I'd like to share with you today.
Can I just interrupt you for just a second, David?
Can I stop you?
No, not a chance. But thanks for trying. I do appreciate it.
All right.
Should we pause for laughter? I don't think it's necessarily coming.
No, don't bother, really.
So, as I explained at the beginning, we're now going to talk about methods that we might continue to present in schools and be involved in schools, and suggestions for dealing with this pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. I know many of you probably came just to hear the book being read. If that's the case and you leave us, don't feel awkward whatsoever. So if you are not interested in the discussions that David's going to have, please feel free to drop out. We won't be offended. We won't track you or anything like that. This is a very strange time for us. This pandemic has been an impetus to reevaluate ourselves and decide what it is that we should be doing and how we should be doing it. Obviously, we can't go to classrooms, and David can't go to classrooms because there's no classrooms in most of the country. And even if there were, there would be more and more problems about coming into a school because of the whole pandemic. But it also has sort of taught us that maybe we needed to reshape ourselves regardless. We look at the carbon footprint that we have. You look at David flying from Victoria to Toronto, from Toronto to Edmonton, Edmonton to Winnipeg, et cetera. It's a pretty big impact, and maybe it's time for us to look at that and stop that. We don't plan on stopping in-person presentations. We just want to give some lovely opportunities and different possibilities for people. I did want to notice, I've got one question from someone, Tina, and you said your sound is cutting out. I hope it's all right with everybody else. If it's not, maybe raise hands if you're having problems. But if there's just a handful of people that are having problems, it's more an indication of the Wi-Fi at your particular place as opposed to David. So thanks, David. Take it away.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I hope it's, is it your sound or my sound that Tina thought was cutting in and out?
I don't know, to be honest with you. Just a sec. Tina's just responded again and saying it's on and off, and it's okay. Thank you. You don't want to hear everything, Tina, that David says anyway.
Oh, well, listen, there's not a lot that I want to there's a lot that I'd love to share. There's a lot that I could share, but I'm going to try and keep it down. For those who don't know, I've been on the road for 21 years. I was a teacher and principal for 28 years. And like anything else, the best teacher that we ever have in life is living. So I've learned some things, a lot of things about reading. And friends, I didn't read a book from cover to cover till I was 27 because I'm severely dyslexic, which also makes up for the measure of creativity that I have. Whenever you have a weakness, Creator also gives you a strength. And the strength that he or she gave me was to think outside of the box, which is that element of creativity that's allowed me to write these 70-odd books. I wasn't a reader. Subsequent to that, I really didn't know a lot about reading. And I learned the hard way. I learned by having two sons who subsequently were not readers. My two boys are not readers because no one taught me, and I had to figure out on my own. So I started to do some research and put it together. And when finally I had it capped, I wrote a book, and I called The Gift of Reading. And I tried to measure everything out, and I've reached out to educators and parents, and I said, it's all a hoax. Who do I sound like now? It really is a hoax to make you buy Leapfrog or to buy some course or to buy some. It's not a technical thing. It's not a science. Reading is not a science, and it isn't. Reading is humanity. Anybody can walk, anybody can talk, and anybody can read. And somebody took that away from us when they figured out somewhere in the US, I think, that you could sell it to people. We can get kids reading earlier. We can, if they bought this course, if they did this, they could start them reading at 4, no, 3, no, 2. And it's all wrong. I found the writings and learnings, teachings of Maria Montessori. Marlene Barron was the president of the University Montessori School, and she wrote this book called I Learned to Read and Write the Way I Learned to Walk and Talk. And the more I listened to it, and the more I thought about it, the more I came to realize that it's true. It's just that natural, a feat. And the proof is in the pudding. My sons don't read because of me. My little girl's an avid reader because of me. And our granddaughter, Isabel, is going to become a reader because of us. Simple as that. So that's the guts of what I have to share. And when I get a chance to talk to trustees, which I do fairly frequently, or to administrators, it's always the same message, and the focus is on reading. Now, recently, I've started to work a lot more with truth and reconciliation with Indigenous issues, and I expect a large number of my friends are cousins, family, Indigenous peoples. And what I've tried to do there is offer something extremely positive both to us as Indigenous people and to non-Indigenous people to realize who we are. Subsequently, that book that you just heard me, tell me if there's anybody in the world who would look at that and say, "Oh, no, that doesn't work for me. It's not true." I got a call from Beijing, China, 2 years ago saying, "We also have 7 teachings in China. 5 are the same as yours. 2 are different. You come to Beijing." I mean, it's inherent throughout the world. Everywhere in the world, we recognize Mother Earth because she is our mother. We come from her, when we die, we all go to her. Matters not what you think or what you say. Mother Earth, Father Sky, Grandfather Sun, Grandmother Moon. So let me break this down into 3 packages. I read my book for you. I've given you a general overview, and I'd like to speak now for about 5 minutes to what I do with kids, then 5 minutes what I do with parents, and then 5 what I do with educators, teachers, administrators, trustees, and that kind of thing. And then maybe a very quick review and bid you all a good day. Very quickly, with primary kids, I want them to know a couple of things. One, it's all about the story. It's not about reading. It's all about the story. And the reality is, friends, the truth is that we kill the love of reading in so many cases because we tell children that they're reluctant readers before they're even able to read. If Maria Montessori was right, kids will walk when they're ready, they'll talk when they're ready, and friends, they'll read when they're ready, not when you want them to read. So when we get into our head that by grade 3, they should be reading at this level, we're wrong. And when we test and label kids always live up to what we tell them they are. We're creating reluctant readers. So in some provinces, and I won't mention Alberta, but in some provinces where they're bringing testing back in a grade 3, it's wrong. We shouldn't be doing that. There's no hurry. We're trying to create the love of reading. It's about the story. And so what we have to do as educators and parents is learn to read to our kids and let them to love stories. It's about the story. And when I go to primary rooms, primary up to grade 3 or so, I always say, I'm going to play a flute for you, and it's going to take you on a voyage. Tell me where you're going. And then I play this flute that's got a little bit of an Egyptian sound, and they all say, Egypt. I say, yeah, now I'm going to tell you a story, and you tell me where you went. And then I share a story with them, and I say, your imagination is 1,000 times better than Walt Disney. It is. So when you watch a television show, it doesn't hold a candle to what you could dream because you were so, so creative. We talk about stories when I'm with primary kids, always. Then when I work with kids who are a little bit older than that, say grade 4 to post-secondary, always the same message, and I always start with mental health. Mental health is real. It is real. It's as real as a broken arm, as a broken leg, and kids have to know that. Friends, we are not taught as educators how to identify or to deal with mental health. I know, I did 3 degrees. I was a principal for years. We're not taught, so all of a sudden we're in a world where it's running rampant. It really is running rampant. Stats Canada tell me that about 80% of our kids right now in our system will somehow be directly affected by somebody who has a mental health issue in their life. And when I ask audiences, I kid you not, over 50% of them will right now tell you somebody in their life takes a pill every day to help them with a mentally related issue. I always start by telling kids it's real. And because I'm a storyteller, I tell them a story related to that. It relates to my own little girl who has a mental health related issue. Next thing I tell every child is you are something special. And the sad thing is, kids, we teach you to look up there. We always say, if you're going to succeed, you're going to look like her, you'll dress like her, you'll drive that car. No, that car, you'll live in a house with a 3-car garage. We tell you to look up there, and boys and girls, you're looking for the wrong place. You should be looking in there, because every one of you has something special. Every one of you has a unique gift, and we're going to go find out what that gift is, and we're going to teach you to live your life around that gift. And if you're an Indigenous person, you'll know what I mean when I say is you get in the river and you swim with the river. You don't swim up that river all of your life so that you can get rich and famous. And no, you go with that river. That's what you do. I start with always mental health and the fact that you've got something special. And then I often try to relate some way of their knowing, you know what it takes to become a reader? There's no magic. You know what it takes? It takes one book. It just takes one book. If you can find one book you like and read it, and one more, the more you do it, the better you get. Simple as that. That's why I loved Harry Potter. That's why I loved so much Junie B. Jones. That's why I love, and my goal as an educator is to say to teachers and parents and administrators, here, try this. I think you'll like this. Get your kids hooked on this one book. And one of my favorite stories ever is speaking to an administrators conference in Kananaskis in Alberta. And I had about 300 administrators, and I said at the time, Harry Potter was at its peak. And I said, is there any one of you who can tell me what the name of Harry's godfather is? 300 administrators. Harry Potter was at its peak, and not one knew the answer. I'm not kidding you. The story is exactly this way. 3 months later, I'm driving through the countryside, and I hear my phone ring. I answer my phone, and some voice comes on and says, Sirius Black. And I said, hello? And the voice repeated, Sirius Black. And I said, who is this? And the voice said, this is Ed Witchen calling. I'm the superintendent of Coal Lake. And what you said is true. I should have read it. David, I'm reading it now. And I'd like you to come and tell all of our staff, our custodians and our secretarial staff and our teachers and our administrators that they should have read it too. What else they should be reading. And we developed an intimate relationship. And the reality is that we have to get our kids hooked. And in order to become readers, kids have to see themselves in a book, and they've got to be able to read it. That we'll talk about momentarily. But for us, all of us to know, you have to find the right kind of books for kids. But kids should know it just takes one book, period. And then sometimes as well, I try and share with them some of my writings to get them hooked on my books. I use a little rhythm and rhyme. And I always say if I was younger, I'd be a rapper. There. That's my message to students. To parents, I always say, parents, listen to me. Somebody who had told me as a young father, I would have been a better parent, but no one told me. So I'm here to tell you this, by the way, if you haven't figured it out yet, parents who know better, do better. And it's true. We all want the best for our kids. I also believe the same thing about teachers. And I also believe the same thing about kids. We would do better if we knew better. So I say, parents, listen to me very carefully. I have 2 sons who don't read because I just didn't know it was my job. I thought teachers or administrators or somebody would pick up the ball, and no one has. So my 2 boys don't read, and it's my fault. But when I figured it out, I became a better parent. And I want all of you to know that reading needs 3 things. I'm telling you now. First thing it needs is time. Your kids will read when it's time and not when you want them to read. So for heaven's sakes, don't let the school or don't let anybody turn them off of reading for whatever reason. You protect your babies. You put an umbrella over them and say, I'm going to give you the time you need. As I did for my little girl when she started school. She started with a letter from me saying, Dear GNS. She was a slow walker. She was a slow talker. She's going to be a slow reader. Under no circumstances will you ever test my daughter, make her feel that she's less than. Under no circumstances will you take her out of the classroom for special reading needs. She thinks she's a wonderful reader. She has 1,000 books in her room and a dad and a mom who read to her every night. No, don't touch her. By the time she got to grade 6 and she started writing tests, she was an avid reader. Everybody knew Victoria was the reading girl, and she still is. Time. Every child needs time, and nobody can rush your baby. Some kids, by the way, start reading right away, as our Ashley did in kindergarten. That's all right. It's for the other kids. Second thing that children need is a hero. Every kid needs a hero. And if you're in an environment where you can't, parents, offer your kids the hero factor, then call the school and say to your child's teacher, I just can't handle this, I need some help. And every teacher should know that. To go put on your hero hat, forget the curriculum. When those kids come in, let them see you with the book so they know that reading is important to you, because you are second in line of heroes. Then when it comes down to actually reading with kids and asking them what they're reading, you put on your, every child needs a hero. I didn't have one. Mom and dad just dropped that ball. Subsequently, I didn't become one. But now I'm my little girl's hero, period. Time, a hero. And the third thing every child needs, simple as this, is books. No books, no reading. Simple as that. Come to the north with me. You'll see so many schools that don't have books. I mean, I went to a school in Cold Lake, in fact, in Bonnieville, and I spoke to a special needs group. They were kids who couldn't really survive in the regular system. And I said, how many of you have books in your room? Not one out of 50 kids. Not one had a book in their room. And some kids said, I've never known anybody who's ever owned a book. No books, no reading. Fortunately, we have wonderful libraries at our fingertips. What we have to do is make sure that the books are available to kids. Two things. One is that they can identify, they can see themselves. If they can't see themselves in the book, they're not going to read it, period. How many books did we have 20 years ago that included Indigenous people? I mean, one or two, Hiawatha, Indian in the Cupboard. It was just really not a highly thought of book. Today, there is just a plethora of authors, Indigenous authors writing for kids so they can say, yeah, I know that. I've danced that dance. Yeah, that regalia. My cook made me stuff just like that. But kids have to be able to see themselves. And all of a sudden, they're showing up in their books, in our books. Second thing is the book has to be accessible. Kids won't read a book if they can't. So you have to find a book that is accessible, that they can read, that they can see themselves in, and that's not always easy. You know, I've said it before. I mean, how many Filipino people live in our country now? How many Filipino Canadians have access to books about the Philippines? If I'm a teacher and I've got 5 Filipino kids in my room, first thing I do is I go to the principal's office and I say, I need some money. I'm going to go online and I'm going to find some accessible books with Filipino content. I need some money. And I, as a principal, say, I'll find it for you. Books have to be 2 things then. They have to be inclusive and they have to be accessible. That's my message to parents. And I have so many wonderful stories. And I'll just give you one real quick one because it's my best. I was speaking in Scarborough maybe 2 or 3 years ago to an audience of parents, maybe about 100 of them. And when I was done, a young woman raised her arm and she said, David, the school called me in today to tell me that my daughter is a reluctant reader. She needed extra help. And I said, and she said, she just turned 6 years old. And I said, right? And she said, she's just like your daughter. I'm not kidding you. She was a really slow walker. She was a really slow talker. And I'm so glad I came. David, maybe she just needs more time. And I said, yeah, maybe. She came over and she hugged me. In front of all these parents, she hugged me, put her head down. She said, oh, thank God I'm here. That's a true story. Now the fun part. When everybody left, one woman remained behind. She was an Asian woman. And I said, Miss, can I help you? And she turned around and she said, yeah, my name is Donna Kwan. I'm the director of the largest school district in Toronto. What you just told these parents, I'd like you to come and tell my 50 superintendents. And I said, oh, Donna, you know, I was joking with everything I said. She said, no, you weren't. I'd like you to come and tell our superintendents. And I said, I won't change my story. You know that. I am who I am. And she said, come. And I did. And that led to me speaking to, I'm not kidding, hundreds of custodial staff and secretarial staff. And it's just, you know how that works? Third group, our educators, teachers and administrators, we've got to be real clear. You have to understand what I just told parents. So I always start with a little bit of that. And then we talk truth, reconciliation. We talk about some of the real positive things about what we have to offer as Indigenous people. And we always talk reading because let's be real clear. I don't think schools should be for readers. I think schools should be for all of our kids. I think my little boy, Tien, who now is 38 years old, who played AAA hockey, gold level soccer, provincial wrestling champion, captain of this, captain of that. I think my little boy should have been able to succeed in school, and he didn't. He didn't because, like me, he's severely dyslexic. And his dad wasn't able to protect him from all of that overtone of dark cloud. When he got out of high school, it was just, it's over. It's over. School should be for all of our kids, every child. But we don't teach kids. We teach kids who can read. Simple as that. And it shouldn't be. And things are evolving and changing. I've been to the Victoria School of Fine Arts in Edmonton, and I've seen other programs that there are some changes taking place, but the nucleus still remains around being able to read. So 2 reasons. 1, kids need to read. It has to read. 2, because if they can read, it's just an escape channel that people can't understand unless they do read. I mean, I don't know how to say it, friends, except that I listened to over 100 books last year. I listened to so many books because I love stories, and I can be listening to books while I'm walking the dog or I'm vacuuming or whatever. So reading is that important, and it's a wonderful gift, and it's for us as educators to make sure that we help kids become readers. And there are strategies, and I'm not adverse at all to sharing strategies. Man, I'll talk about how we shut our school down every day for silent reading. I'll talk about how we had obviously author visits were one thing, but I can talk about some of the programs that we initiated, leadership programs where I said to our staff, we're all going to go out in a Pro-D and we're going to buy books for your classroom library. And our parent group raised $17,000. We went and every one of our teachers bought these books. They put their names and their stink on the book, and that became their passion. And on one occasion, true story, grade 4, I shouldn't have been in an elementary school because I struggled, but grade 4, recess bell rang, secretary came in, she said, David, pandemonium, grade 4. And they were running all around screaming. And so I did what every principal does. I screamed at them, stop. And they froze. And I said, where is Mrs. Dean? And they all pointed to the back of the room. And I walked in and she was sitting in a big beanbag chair with a book in her hands. And I leaned over and I was a little embarrassed that she didn't recognize my being there. And the kids were all watching to see her get it. And I coughed. I said, excuse me, Mrs. Dean. And no response. I said, excuse me, Nancy Jean. No response. I had to push her. And she looked up and she said, oh, David. I said, oh, David. Oh, David. What are you doing? And she looked at the book and she looked at me and she said, modeling? And I might not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I realized those kids were going to go home that night and say, tell all of their parents Mrs. Dean was so into her book that she forgot about us when recess was over. I mean, it's about hero. It's about knowing how important it is and about, so that was the strategy that we used. Every teacher had their own classroom library, the books that they loved. And so we could talk strategy forever, but I wanted you to know then that with teachers, we talk about rating and we talk about Indigenous issues, culture, tradition, values. And the real wonderful thing about what we have to offer now through technology is that we can customize. I mean, I could spend an hour talking to a staff or to a parent group or to a classroom about what their individual interest is at the time. I mean, I could read a book or I could just say, kids, you've got me for a half hour. I'm cheap. I'm here in my shack in Victoria, and what would you like to talk about? And they may have a whole ton of questions to ask me. It's just so right. We shouldn't have needed a pandemic in order for us to think, hey, why are we doing this? Why is it that kids in Nunavut can't have access to your learnings, your teachings, and your passion because you're just too far away, when with technology, we just do it like that. So it's taken us some time, but we're there, we're ready to go. And I guess I'll turn it back over to Chris, but I can't tell you how excited I am about the opportunity to reach out and to make a difference through something that is there and easily accessible. So to all of you, thank you very much for putting up with this.
David,
Chris?
peut-être quelques mots en français?
Oh, je vais dire, donc, si j'ai des amis francophones qui sont là, parmi moi, comprenez que je suis françois, donc je suis francophone, la Saskatchewan, et ce que je vous ai dit tantôt, je fais aussi fréquemment, aussi facilement en français qu'en anglais. Donc, si vous êtes partie de notre auditoire francophone, soyez certain de comprendre que je suis là pour vous, autant que non, que mes livres, j'ai écrit, je pense que j'ai 37 livres en français, et chaque fois que je fais un livre récemment, comme le nouveau que je vous ai dit tantôt, il existe autant en français qu'en anglais. Donc, soyez certains que si vous avez besoin ou si vous avez envie, je suis là. Donc, merci, Chris. I shouldn't have forgotten. I can't believe it. It's who I am, and I need to be reminded.
So, shall we do the Anderson Cooper, Chris Como kind of thing now? I think we're both on the screen, but I'm not completely sure. So, thanks, David. That was wonderful. I hope that all the rest of you enjoyed it. Now I'd like to ask anybody if they have any questions or anything. I would like to start with one from Joanne. I see you're still here. Joanne French says, will David share his reading of this book on social media, YouTube, as he has with his others recently? You've done this on Instagram already, haven't you, David? You've read, if we're not from, We Learn from the Sun?
Chris, I think so. But to Joanne, I've been putting these readings up on Instagram, on Facebook, and on my YouTube channel. And to access my YouTube channel, and I plan to do more and more, partially because of the pandemic, and I'd like to be of assistance to teachers and parents who are looking for content. So yeah, go there and you'll see them, and know that I plan on putting more and more out there.
If people have questions, by all means now, please type them in and we'll address them. Kate Jackson, lovely note from you, Kate. Thank you very much. Just saying how much you enjoyed your stuff, David, and you've been to
Thanks, Kate.
And let's have a look and see if there's anybody else.
If there's anybody that's wondering, I wonder that I've been to so many schools in the last 20 years. Chris has had me on the road. I've been, I can't tell you how many schools that I've done, but I can tell you that we've talked to 1 million people in 20 years. And that includes a lot of adult audiences in the US. We've gone to India, China. I go to Paris every year for the Salons du Livre. So No wonder I've done so many schools and I don't regret one.
Pascal, parfait, car je suis française et prof de français. So there you go. Thank you for remembering, David. Oh, you didn't.
Et Pascal, tu devrais savoir que j'ai pu présenter une histoire à Calgary. Donc, j'avais peut-être 400 les enseignants et les enseignantes de franco-sud de l'Alberta cette année. Ça a tellement, tellement bien été. Et à l'Université Saint-Albert aussi à Edmonton.
One of the things that I wanted to mention as well is that tomorrow, we haven't figured out Zoom completely yet, but tomorrow you will get an email from us with links on, as David mentioned earlier, how to purchase We Learn from the Sun if you're interested in it, from the publisher at Medicine Wheel. And there will be information on how you can get involved and have a presentation by David if you so desire. I think that's about it that will be on the follow-up. We'd love to come to your school. David loves coming to schools, and it's just a magic opportunity now to do it in a virtual way. One of the things I want to stress is that this is on Zoom. This is a webinar, so you're out there and you're not participating. That's, except for asking questions, that's not the way we anticipate this stuff happening when we get into schools. We're anticipating using any platform. It will be your platform wherever you are if you're in a school. So it will be Zoom, it will be FaceTime, it will be Skype, it'll be Team. We'll make it work for you. And the other thing too is if you do something like Zoom, if you have a meeting instead of a webinar and it's a classroom, then you can have all 25 or 30 up to 100 kids on the screen as well, David talking to them, etc. I've got from Angela, will this amazing podcast be accessible online so we can show others in our school? What we're going to do is David and I are going to do a very similar thing, but just the two of us, and he will post it on his YouTube channel. That will happen in the next week or so. As a teacher of reading, I thank you from Brampton. Thanks, Maria. Are there any specific schools that we can donate books to from Danielle? Oh, Danielle, I probably shouldn't have read that out loud. I should give them your email address, Danielle, because you'd hear from about 400. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe people that are looking for books can send me an email when they get mine tomorrow, and I can pass it on to Danielle. Danielle, maybe you can drop me a note as to where you are. Do we have permission to share your videos with our students? The ones that David reads on Instagram, of course. I've had some questions asking, can we give copies like the one we just did with We Learn from the Sun? Well, there's copyright laws, there's publishers, there's authors, there's artists, everything else. So it's not something we can just give away. It is part of how we make our living. And in a perfect world, if we had lots of money, we would just say, drop in tomorrow and we'll read all our books, we'll show you our books and share, but copyrights stop us.
Yeah, Chris, if I can add to that real quickly, I know that Teddy and the team at Medicine Wheel have asked me if I would be willing to do a reading, and I think they're going to put that out there and make it accessible to educators and parents. They've also had me sign 350 books, and they're going to be giving out an autographed book to the first 300 people who pre-order the book, I think.
Okay, good. Now, Maxine, hello, Maxine. Nice to see your name. Is your other book coming out yet? Maybe that's Maxine Hildebrand. Do you know if she's talking about something other than We Learn from the Sun, David?
Oh, yeah, she is. Maxine not only knows what's coming, but she knows what I dreamed. We were so close, she and Mark. Maxine, yes, right now as we speak, Christy is illustrating, and it's called Meet Your Family. And for those who are interested, what I do in this book is I teach, I share where we come from, who our mother is, Mother Earth, and who your father is, the sky, and your grandfather. And I've done it in a really, really fun way, very much like We Learned from the Sun. And Christy's illustrating it now. And I don't know how soon it's going to come out. This We Learned from the Sun is coming out in English, and then shortly thereafter in French, and then Meet Your Family. And for other ideas, I guess I have to come and see you, Maxine.
Dennis asks, what's your favorite flute to play? Just answer it, David. Don't play it. I've got too many questions.
Who asked that?
Dennis.
Dennis. Oh, Dennis, shut up. That is awful. He knows what I was going to say. My favorite flute that you heard initially is a maquas. A maquas from Ontario. Maquas flutes are not only affordable, every one of them is perfectly tuned, and they have character beyond belief. And I think Dennis owns about 4 of them.
Oh, okay. From Vicky Raphael, I like your message. I understand you will facilitate sessions with parents, teachers, administration. I'm an Indigenous district teacher who supports Indigenous students and families for their success. I also work with teaching staff and administration. Do you have sessions for parents of low readers for middle years and upper high schools? I'm actually going to jump in before David answers that. All of David's sessions can be modified and made to fit exactly what it is you want. The student presentations, for the most part, in David's touring over the last 20 years, I don't want to say they're identical, but there's pretty much a template of what he presents to children, to adults, and to parents, to parents and to teachers, administrators. I always have that person, that group, talking to David beforehand to make sure that we're talking about exactly what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Right, David?
Yeah, and Vicky, absolutely. So recently I've had a chance to go into Tri-Cities in BC and speak to about 100 kids who are in a school, an alternative school for kids who really struggle in a regular system with curriculum that's been modified. So I've worked with all kinds of special needs schools and communities and classrooms, and the people that you're talking about are absolutely my interest and passion. So yeah, customized to the ninth. It just comes from the heart, doesn't it?
Yeah, Kathleen asked, do you want to come to? Do you only want to come to schools, or will you do it with a community organization? Great question. We will do it with anybody. I mean, seriously, birthday party, anything like that. Community organizations. As a matter of fact, I'm going to talk to David about this, but I'm in the process of just trying to get a hold of libraries in British Columbia to see if there are, because there's the school author readings at libraries. In fact, David's done a number of them, but they've been live, but we are looking at the possibility of doing that as well. So yes, we are open to anybody that would like to have David speak. We would love to have him there.
And Kathy, it's been so long. I don't know that you'd recognize me with the white beard in the street. You'd walk right by.
Aaron Danforth, we miss you, David. Mother Earth School.
Oh.
How not?
Oh, Aaron, and I missed you too. You're one of my favorite schools ever.
I want to say thank you for your time and everything you shared about children learning and just read as they learn to walk. Really, I will share be connecting with you. Have a beautiful day. That's lovely. That's from Hale. Sorry that I'm looking through these, but I want to try and answer as many questions as we can, because that's what we're here for. And it's lovely to see so many names that ring a bell, even though, well, I ultimately took your book order and sent it to you. It's kind of fun. Would you be able and willing to play songs and post them to YouTube? Try and stop him, Sarah.
Sarah, just recently I did my healing song, and that related to the pandemic, and I think I dedicated a song to those emergency workers and the frontline workers. So I put my healing song out there, but yeah, I could easily do others. I have 7 sacred songs and I have a few others, but that's not a bad idea. Thanks.
Terry, the publisher from David, help me, from Medicine Wheel, has left a note saying that We Learn from the Sun. It comes out in French on September the 1st.
Right on, Teddy. Teddy, thank you. And for all our participants, know that Teddy Anderson is just a phenomenal hoop dancer. Teddy's passions and his skills lie in everything that's right for Indigenous people and children. And his allowing this to come to fruition has been a real godsend. So, Teddy, thank you. And September, that's soon, and I'm just dying to see it.
Et en français, ça s'appelle quoi?
Et en français en plus. Merci, Teddy.
Ça s'appelle quoi? Ça, le titre est quoi?
Le titre, c'est On apprend du soleil. We learn from the sun, on apprend du soleil. And the fun thing is that Teddy was kind enough to allow me to write it in French rather than having somebody translate it, because often you lose something in the translation. And when French is your first language and you're a Western Canadian, we have an individual way of expressing ourselves. So I was thrilled that it'll be coming out in my language.
Kirsten, I'm sorry I missed how to pre-order. Kirsten, the email you get from me tomorrow will have a link for you to get to Medicine Wheel, and you can order from them. Kate Jackson, any other plans to coordinate with other musicians for this story? Perhaps virtual class school visits could offer the option to hear from David along with the elders from the Indigenous language the book promotes, and could also include a connected teaching. We're open to anything, Kate. These could be connected to seasons or specific issues that the school might need help reiterating and teaching. Lots of cool opportunities to customize. You're totally right.
And more than that, Kate, what you just touched on, we're seeing daily, aren't we? We're seeing split screens where some artist comes on and does 3 or 4 parts, and technology really has no end. And the funny thing about doing what we're doing now, I have to confess, I was the teacher who, when I was approached a few years few decades ago saying, would you like to teach computer science? I said, no, I'll teach religion instead. I'm not kidding you. It was just that challenging for me. And here we are in today's day and age thinking we're here. Who'd have ever believed it? Not me.
Sasha, lovely note thanking us for you, David, for allowing that you've got things on Facebook, etc.
Sasha in Manitoba, does she say where?
She says she's in Stonewall and she's a bison farmer.
Oh, I remember Sasha so well. She's right up by that beautiful, beautiful prison. And yeah, we were going to work something out on a bison pelt. Remember that, Sasha? Are we still talking?
We'll find out in just a second. Kathleen, thank you for your note, and looking forward to your email so I can follow up working with my early literacy organization in Waterloo and with many mental health organizations, but still creating media. I think there's a reason you popped back into my life, and I definitely would have recognized you. Be well. Thank you for doing this. One of the things I had not mentioned, yes, you are going to get that email from me tomorrow. If there's anybody that wants to chat before that, davidbouchard.com. You'll see all the connections. Again, my name's Chris Patrick. You'll find me there. I'm the one you're going to talk to when you first set things up. You'll see all the prices for things. David's expensive. Having David come to your school cost a lot of money in the past because we never charged any sort of expenses. So from David to fly from Victoria to Toronto, it was expensive. So we would, the prices reflected that. But this new option, I think it's going to give people a lot of opportunity to be able to host David. Again, we can do it in any format you've got. We are not limited to Zoom by any means. And if you want to do it on Zoom, we can set it up ourselves and send you invitations. So the students,
Chris, if I can add real quickly to that, because we've not mentioned so many varieties of audiences that I've worked with. I've worked extensively for the jails in Kingston. There's one maximum security facility for Indigenous youth under the age of 21, kids who have committed heinous crimes in Fort Francis, and I've gone in there several times. So I've worked with special needs groups. I've worked with prisons both in Edmonton as well. And so you can apply this idea of learning how to read and loving reading to so many scenarios. And then likewise, you can apply it to so many Indigenous communities from the far north, where otherwise they probably have never met an author.
Sasha, Manitoba, yes, bison, pelt, and flute.
All right. Et en passant, après, Sasha, je me souviens bien de toi. We were at a conference one day and she walked over and Sasha, je me souviens pas, c'est peut-être à Niagara Falls, mais je me souviens tellement bien et je m'ennuie de toi aussi.
Nancy Miners, as a Montessori teacher, I would like to thank you, David. Where to go? A bunch of them popped up there. Sorry. I would like to thank you, David, for telling everyone to give children the best gifts of all, stories and time. I just want to do a little note of mine, too. I was one of those reluctant readers. I'm not as old as David. Not many people are. But I am old, and I was not a reader as a kid, and I was one of these ones that was told, Mr. Knight in grade 12, you had to come in the next day and you had to recite a poem. You had to do it by memory, by Shakespeare or whomever, and just didn't like reading. And after I listened to David a few times, I became an avid reader, and I'm still not prolific, but it's kind of neat, and it's just such a special world, and I thank him. And I've been very lucky to work with this man for 20 years. I've been told my whole life that I should be in sales. I don't want to be in sales. I don't care what kind of dishwasher you use or what kind of car you drive. It just makes no difference to me whatsoever. But working with David has been as special as can be because I believe so much in what he does and what he brings to our society.
I love you, Chris Patrick.
Now I've got, let's see.
It sounds like the Como brothers. By the way, can I very quickly, while we're talking Montessori, every year I used to buy a copy of this book. I learned to read and write the way I learned to walk and talk, and I would give it to our staff, whether I was in secondary or in primary schools. Every one of our teachers got this. I wanted them to have it. Likewise, whenever I would always buy a copy of Reading with Dad, and I would make sure that everybody on staff would get one. So as an administrator, there are some passions that you come up with and then you try to promote those. And so, yeah, that's one of my favorite books by Marlene Barron.
Sasha, oui, je me souviens. Tina, I'd love to invite you to Vernon via Zoom. I'll keep an eye open for your contact info. Thank you for your words, inclusive and accessible. Tina, again, go to davidbouchard.com. You'll see my name in there as contacts. Give me a jingle anytime. Call me and we can talk about it, or you can wait till tomorrow. I think that's it for questions. our numbers are still pretty high. So I thank all of you for enduring this. It's been a delight. We will send all of you a note when this is up on YouTube in the next week or so, that if you want to share it to other people, not this particular one because it's too long, but a shortened version where we will simply talk about options that schools and teachers and administrators have. I'm assuming there is nothing else. So as the auctioneer says, when I'm due the last gone, I'm going to click a button and you're all going to be gone. And I thank you all for spending time
Thank
with
all
us.
of you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Going